Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the textured animal drawing. Today we're going to focus on tone and texture. So in the last lesson you should have drawn the outline of your animal and coloured in any of the solid black areas. Today we're going to add in all the tone, which is the shading to make it look 3D. In America it's called values. And we are going to add in lots of different texture techniques so it looks properly furry and fuzzy like a tiger should be. So you're going to want to start by trying out different textures that you're going to use. You can see here I'm just drawing 4 little boxes and that will be 4 different tones I'm going to use. So I'm going to start in the first box and I'm going to shade it in really dark. Now you'll probably have more than one texture in your animal drawing, so that's why I've drawn 2 little bits. So in my first box I want to get just the general hair texture. So the first box is going to be mostly black and I'm going to do little W strokes. My hand's kind of covering it here. But I'm going to do W strokes like the texture of hair. I'm just going to shade the first box in mostly black. So this will be any sections, this texture will fill in any sections that are mostly black but are going into the lighter bits. Now in the second box I'm not going to lean down as heavily and I'm going to leave more space in my box. So you can see here it's quite small but I have left little spaces in my box. I'm just doing little W shapes and remembering to flick it off at the end. So the third box is I'm leaning a lot lighter now and leaving a lot more open space, and the last box will have loads of open space. It's barely there, I'm barely touching the page and you can just about see those 3 different tones of the one colour. In that middle bit of the nose I'm going to do pointillism. I'm not going to show you that, it's just doing dots. So now I'm back into my drawing and you can see now I'm adding final detail. I have to be more careful with the texture I'm using. So in this bit in the chin here, instead of just colouring solid black, I'm now having to put in little bits of detail. So I'm putting in the hair texture and the dark spots that are in his chin, and I'm doing that with the W strokes. And any lighter bits, I'm maintaining the same texture but I'm just doing lighter on other bits. It is useful to turn your page upside down and round, whatever way feels more natural to draw your texture strokes, and you have to make sure your texture is all in the right direction. So for these stripes it's now getting a lot more fiddly, so I'm having to really pay attention to what way I'm using my pen. There's no point doing cross hatching, which is when you shade one way and then the other way, or anything like that, because you're wanting to show the texture. So I'm gonna do these little small details but maintain the W type of pen motion to get it done. You could also see that this is a bit of negative drawing, so I am wanting the white to still stand out, so I'm colouring in some bits really dark beside it to make it stand out. And here I'm doing more negative drawing, so I'm going to draw around the shape of where the black will go and then I'll shade it in. But I'm always going to do my edges with the fine biro pen just so I can get the detail. I just colour in some block colours with the big black pen sometimes to make it quicker. And it's always easier to draw lines kind of going upwards, so that's why I turn my page over. So I find it easier personally to draw the flicky motions and get the nice fine point if you go upwards instead of downwards. That's why I turn my page around. This bit is really strong negative drawing, so you can see now that the shape of the hair is turning out better because I've added in this black. I do have pencil lines in here that you can just about see, so I'm not doing this completely freehand. I did draw it lightly in pencil first. It's always a good idea to do that because you can't rub out pen. If you make a mistake, you just have to live with it. If you try and paint it out, it is an option, but it kind of gives a texture and it doesn't look as good. It's like using Tipp-Ex, you can always see where it was. So in here I've got some lighter and more delicate stripes that I'm putting in, and any of the little details. Obviously I've got this sped up, but it still takes some time. And I'm doing the negative drawing again here. So negative drawing is when you draw around the thing that you're wanting to stand out. So for the whiskers you could draw around each one individually. Because they're white, obviously you're not going to color them in black, so you have to draw around them individually. I actually cheated at the end and I've got a white pen that I used. But you can just draw around them individually, it just takes a while. So remember, always finish off your lines with the biro. Looking at some of your ones from last week, a lot of you were doing lovely texture and those flick motions I was talking about, but not each hair is individual by itself. There are some ones that are like clumped together in little spikes, so like these ones I'm doing here. So you might want to add some more spiky ones that are grouped together instead of the individual ones all the time. You want it to look natural, and natural hair isn't always individual hairs you see. Sometimes they're all like clumps together. The bit I'm doing here is a really good example of negative drawing. So you'll see that the white hair is now standing out a lot because I drew in the black behind it, so it makes it stand out. Now I'm starting to add in more tone. So these are lighter pen marks I'm doing, and I'm doing a very faint outline there as well. I'm keeping my outline textured as well. I don't want it to be just a solid outline. You'll see that I've drawn it quite lightly, and that's so it looks more natural. You could choose to do even more negative drawing and colour in the background a little bit so the animal sticks out. Do you remember when we did our portraits in S1 and we put them on a black background to make them stand out more? You could do something like that, but I've just decided to do a very faint background. Biros are good to use for this type of task because you can lean heavy and lightly, and they give different thickness and darkness to your pen. A lot of the time I'll use the fine line pens if I'm doing more professional type work. I've got them beside me there, they're in that white packet, and you get different thicknesses of those pens. But the biro, honestly, I was a constant doodler in school, so because I was always doodling, it's quite easy for me to draw on biro because I was always writing on biro in my like French book and stuff. So here I'm really working on texture and tone. So I'm working in this area to become a lot darker around the eye. And I'm doing a variation of pointillism. Pointillism is when you do loads of dots, remember? I'm doing a bit of that, but I'm kind of keeping it little tiny stroke motions. And by gripping the dots closer together towards the corners of the eyes, it makes it darker and then it's more spread out the rest of the place. Now I'm adding in all my texture, but I really want you to be careful and not overdo your texture and tone. You still want to have that contrast of the white and the black. So you just don't want any areas that are just solid white really, unless it's in your animal. You want to have little bits of texture in, but don't overdo it. This is the final drawing. You can see that I used a white pen in to finish it off. I'm quite happy with how it ended up. It's very accurate. Now some of your outline drawings are going to make it not so accurate, but I am really wanting you to focus on tone and texture for this. So if it doesn't look proportionally correct, the main focus is tone and texture. If you're finding it difficult to get your proportions right, remember the grid technique that we've done loads of times before, like that Picasso project we did as a group. So you can use the grid to redraw if you need to, because some of your proportions were quite off, but the main focus is texture and tone. So I hope you get this done for next week. Thank you, bye!